Tonight, back to near normal. Nightclubs reopen and bars and restaurants can ditch table service. The latest COVID regulations are relaxed.
After losing 2 Hogmanay in a row, it's just been such a sad time for us all in the entertainment and nightclub business, so it's just good to be back open.
Travel restrictions are also given an overhaul with the end to testing. Also making the headlines, home testing kits are on the cards to replace going to the GPs for smear tests. In sport, Celtic captain Callum McGregor is set to be sidelined for at least a month with a facial injury.
Old leaves fall from the trees just like dead memories.
And the busker who's gone from Buchanan Street to the Barrowlands in a year.
I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. Today, the final barriers to near normality were lifted. From 5 a.m. this morning, COVID rules put in place during festive season to limit the spread of Omicron ended. Nightclubs can reopen, pubs and restaurants can remove table service, and there are no limits on indoor events.
The number of COVID cases are down, the number of people in hospital is down, the number of patients in ICU is down, and there have been no new deaths. The First Minister said restrictions were worth it and that Scotland had turned a corner with the virus. Our political reporter Laura Alderman has been gauging reaction across the country.
Dusting off their disco balls, tonight this Edinburgh nightclub is hosting a rerun of their cancelled Hogmanay party.
Just so excited we're able to be open again tonight. After losing 2 Hogmanays in a row, it's just been such a sad time for us all in the entertainment and nightclub business, so it's just good to be back open. Most people are vaccinated and I think the party's ready to start every night now.
As dance floors across the country like this one spring back into life, restrictions on hospitality are being eased too. Now there's no longer a requirement for table service and you can get served at the bar again. Cheers!
When the restrictions were imposed, many pubs and restaurants faced a raft of festive cancellations. Now they're hoping for a business boost.
We've got Burns Night here tomorrow night and we've certainly had an increase of bookings for that with the restrictions easing, and families being able to come out with households and screens going and people not having to do the 1 metre distancing, so it's great.
Last week, a ban on large outdoor events was lifted, and from today, crowd limits on indoor events are being scrapped too. Festival goers to Celtic Connections can now expect around 50 live shows across Glasgow.
It's incredible, really. It's been what should have been a big couple of years for our band, launching an album, but more than that, it's just about getting that connection back with audiences, and I think that connection's been what we've all missed in the last couple of years.
But some restrictions do remain, including face coverings in certain indoor settings, self-isolation requirements and the vaccine passport scheme. And for now, we're still being asked to work from home. But for businesses like Justine's, who rely on office workers in the city centre, there's still no end in sight. Many are waiting for government funding.
We have so many restrictions in here, it's really affected us, and we should have been treated like hospitality. They got larger grants, we didn't. They got a cut in VAT, we didn't. There's a lot of businesses out there that really need that money. They need it now, not in February or March, now, or they're not going to be here.
Almost 7,000 new cases of COVID have been recorded in the last 24 hours, and the number of people in hospital and ICU is slowly coming down.
But if that downward trajectory continues, I think we'll have less pressure on the NHS and we can look forward to a much better spring. I would actually ask all of us just to think about, even if we are feeling positive about these changes, that there are people who are worried. Keep your distance, wear a face covering. Think about the setting, the ventilation, who you're meeting up with.
Many people who are still worried about COVID are being offered free badges and lanyards, indicating they'd like some more space. Lynn is an unpaid carer for her husband and feels their lives are now being put at risk.
Living with COVID, like for many other families, has significant implications on what our lives look like going forward. I'm not afraid of catching COVID. I'm afraid of what it means for my husband. And I'm scared for him because for him, his ability to fight off infection is limited.
After 2 years of this pandemic, there's no doubt that for many, today's easing of restrictions is seen as a significant step forward, with perhaps the worst of the Omicron wave behind us for now.
Well, of course, another COVID restriction being lifted today was the curb on indoor contact sports, meaning, as I'm sure you can hear, players here from the West Edinburgh Warriors basketball team can now finally get back to the court. And their coach, Gav Mingus, joins me now. Gav, just tell me, what does it feel like to be back here tonight?
It's just a great opportunity to get everybody back together again, doing the sport that we love and reconnecting with a few faces that we haven't seen from, well before Christmas.
And how tough has it been not being able to play the sport that you love?
It's difficult. For the guys that love the sport and have been in it for a long, long time, it's been difficult to stay connected with people. But at the same time, it has given them the opportunity to try new things, so just trying to stay positive.
And what have the players been telling you about wanting to come back?
There's been a lot of hype, there's been a lot of excitement, especially as you can see in the background, a lot of the kids and stuff are really excited about being back, and we pride ourselves on being a bit of a community, so it's good to get everybody back together again.
Of course, that's the other element of it, is it? It's not just about fitness, is it?
No, it's about staying connected to other people. It's like a community within a community. I think it's easy to get kind of bogged down in the political side of COVID, but now that we're all back together again, we can share in some of the things that we've been up to while we've been apart.
Well, Gav, I won't keep you too much longer. I'll let you get back to it. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, tomorrow the First Minister is due to give another COVID update in Parliament. We could be hearing about face coverings in school classrooms. That's something the Scottish Conservatives want scrapped now, but it doesn't quite seem that the Scottish Government is ready to do that just yet.
All right, Laura, we'll find out tomorrow. Thank you. Well, good news also on travel restrictions. Fully vaccinated passengers arriving in the UK will no longer have to take a post-arrival lateral flow test from 4 a.m. on February the 11th.
The Scottish Government confirmed the move after the UK Transport Secretary Grant Shapps gave a travel update in the Commons earlier. Our chief reporter Sharon Frew joins us now from Glasgow Airport.
Yes, that's right, John. Within the last half hour, the Scottish Government confirmed it's taking a four nations approach to the easing of travel restrictions. We've had months of testing pre-departure and within 2 days of arrival, plus all the from next month, all fully vaccinated people will have to do now is, when they travel to the UK, is to verify their status through a passenger locator form. Now, that's only for fully vaccinated people and those under the age of 18. For those who have not had all their jabs, well, they'll still have to take a test pre-departure and a PCR test 2 days after they return. This is, of course, welcome news to travel agents who are hoping this will lead to a surge in summer bookings.
Delighted that Scotland have gone with a four nations approach. It just simplifies the whole travel system, but it strengthens the confidence of the consumer, of the traveller, and we really do hope that testing is a thing of the past. So as a travel industry, we are absolutely delighted.
You will, of course, still have to wear face masks, and travel agents are urging people to check the requirements of the country you're travelling to. These changes come into force at 4 a.m. on the 11th of February. Will it lead to busier airports? Well, the travel and the aviation industry certainly hope so.
Sharon at Glasgow Airport, thank you.
Now, the days of heading to your GP for a smear test could be over. Experts say at-home testing for smear tests could be rolled out in Scotland in the next 5 years, with hopes of increasing the number of women getting the vital examination.
Cervical cancer is the most common in women under the age of 35. Our reporter Ivana Holland has spoken with one former cancer patient who wants the rollout to happen sooner rather than later.
At the age of 29 with 3 children, Emma Keys was incredibly happy with life. But in July last year, her world changed when she was diagnosed with cervical cancer. This was her first thought on hearing the news.
My children, just that I was going to die, and I'd brought them into this world and they weren't going to have their mum anymore.
3 surgeries and an all clear later, she's now campaigning to get at-home smear tests rolled out across Scotland, hoping women will begin to prioritise their health.
You just think you're kind of invincible, you're young, cancer doesn't happen to somebody who's 29 with 3 kids, and it does. But it went to the bottom of my list, and there was things that I prioritised over that I shouldn't have, just because it's difficult to get the children watched and because I'm working. So having, a test posted through my door, doing it and being able to send that off would have been so much more convenient.
A successful trial for home testing kits was carried out in NHS Dumfries and Galloway last year, targeting women who'd not shown up for their appointments. It could be in the form of a urine test, and the hope is that it could be rolled out nationally in time.
I envisage that we'll be seeing this in the next, well, certainly within 5 years. It could be sooner than that. They wouldn't need to take time off work or sort out childcare or other care. For women who find the intimate examination of a smear test taken very difficult, painful or distressing, you can overcome those barriers to screening. Because the most important thing about cervical screening is women attend and have the screening test done. And if we can find a way of making that easier for women, then that is good news.
A smear test is a check, normally administered by a nurse, to look for the presence of human papillomavirus, known as HPV. It causes 99% of cervical cancers. It's the most common cancer for women under the age of 35. Those between the ages of 25 and 64 are invited for a smear every 5 years.
That used to be every 3 years, but now there's a new test for HPV. It's more sensitive. It detects the HPV virus even earlier, and that's being rolled out across the 4 nations. Scotland actually made the change back in March 2020, but that got overshadowed by the pandemic. But health experts and politicians are in agreement. This is the right move for women's health.
The thing with cervical cancer, unlike some other cancers, is that it is quite slow moving. So we have from initial cell changes to developing cancer around 10 years. It's a more individualised response. So if people are found to be HPV positive, they will be called back for further investigation sooner than 5 years.
The WHO is predicting that within 10 years, with the new sophisticated testing and the uptake of the HPV vaccine, cervical cancer could become eradicated to the point it would be an extremely rare disease.
Well, Ivana joins us in the studio now. Ivana, so this move to carry out smears every 5 years rather than 3 years, it's prompted a lot of chat online, hasn't it?
It certainly did. Earlier this month we saw a petition, but I think that's because people thought that women were going to get fewer smear tests, and that's not the case. The decision to move to every 5 years was taken. UK National Screening Committee took that decision back in 2016. It's just taken that long for this actually to come around in all 4 nations to get on board. Now that's because it's the new HPV test, which I referenced in my piece, and it's just more effective.
And presumably this move would help the NHS.
Yeah, I think this could help take the burden of some of the testing that some nurses could do. But let me be clear, this does not eliminate you going to your nurse for a test. You don't have to perform at home a personal examination on yourself. It could take the form of a urine test. So really this is just more about an opportunity to get more women to take the test who maybe find themselves too busy, who find the examination uncomfortable and the scenario uncomfortable. Now, what we find with the pandemic is that there's a huge backlog of people waiting for their specialist unit appointment. Now, it's not a perfect picture, but at the moment, this is a good move for women's health.
All right, Ivana, thanks very much for all of that. Thank you.
Tributes are being paid to the Perth teenager Lily Douglas, who died from a rare form of cancer last night. Lily had been living with the disease since 2017, but continued to dance and enjoy everything about life, inspiring others. Laura Boyd has been taking a look back on her life.
Lily Douglas danced her way through life, winning awards and hearts wherever she went. In 2017, she was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer called Ewing sarcoma, which saw part of her shoulder blade removed. But even that didn't get her down.
I felt very, not sad, but I felt very confused at why it had to happen to me, but I would never want it to happen to anyone else because it's not really nice to have cancer.
This selfless attitude saw Lily become a star amongst many celebrity fans, none more so exciting to her than Lewis Capaldi.
If he didn't do all his music, I don't know what my life would be like without him. So I'm just so happy I get to meet him.
But it was Strictly favourite Arlene Phillips who became a firm family friend.
I don't think she ever realised how much she brought to everyone who knew her. Everyone saw this little girl fighting with this warrior attitude.
Last year, Lily won a Pride of Scotland award and, despite being in a wheelchair, took gold with her team at the Dance World Cup. Sadly, her health deteriorated, and last night, this brave teen died at home in Perth with her beloved mother Jane by her side. Jane said, "Thank you for the memories and please don't forget my brave, beautiful girl. She is out of pain now and no longer living with this cruel illness. She lit up the world with her beautiful smile. I'm so grateful and so lucky God picked me to be her mum. I will miss her forever."
Lily has to be remembered from the smile that just spread joy onto people. You could feel it. You could feel the light shining. But I always want to remember her as the girl who flew high and danced and danced and danced.
Remembering Lily Douglas, who passed away last night. Well, that takes us on to other stories across Scotland now, and Transport Minister Graham Day has resigned from the Scottish Government for health reasons. Mr Day dealt with threatened rail strikes, ferry delays, COVID restrictions on air travel and road improvements. He'll stay on as MSP for Angus South and will be replaced by Mid-Fife and Glenrothes MSP Jenny Gilruth. Airdrie and Shotts MSP Neil Gray becomes Culture Minister.
Train fares in Scotland have risen by nearly 4% in the steepest price hike in nearly a decade. Transport Scotland says the increase is essential to the railway's recovery plans. An annual season ticket between Glasgow and Edinburgh has risen by £162.
And detectives are hunting a man who drove a BMW at a motorcyclist before assaulting him in an attempted murder bid. The incident happened on Pilton Avenue in Edinburgh at around 10 o'clock last night. The suspect, who was wearing a dark hooded top, abandoned the black vehicle and ran off in the direction of Pilton Place. The motorcyclist is being treated for a serious leg injury.
For the first time since the start of the pandemic, 4 of Glasgow's libraries have reopened their doors. Campaigners say they are a lifeline service, which offer people a chance to meet, work, learn and, of course, read. Our reporter Ollie Dickinson was at Whiteinch Library as the local community returned.
A moment 2 years in the making. Locked out of their library since the start of the pandemic, people from across the local area of all ages were back at Whiteinch at 1 p.m. sharp as the doors were opened.
I've used this library on and off since I was a wee girl, so we're talking 50 odd years of coming to this library, so it really is a special place, and I'm really looking forward to bringing my grandchildren, who some of them haven't even managed to visit yet, to the library and use it.
For communities across Glasgow, the reopening is about more than just access to books. Campaigners say these are buildings that are a lifeline to those who use them.
When the library closed, there was a group of people outside with their phones, and I hadn't realised that they needed the signal from the library to use their phones. The local schools, St Thomas Aquinas, pupils whose homes don't have broadband were always sent to the library, and they've really missed it.
And the reopening campaign has been followed from near and far. Michael now lives in South Africa, but has fond memories of the library.
I brought my children up in this area, and we often used to come here after school, sit down, read a few books in the children's area there. I myself have always loved this library. I've done some studying here myself in the reading room over there.
And with the doors back open, it's time for those in Whiteinch to celebrate. Ollie Dickinson, STV News.
Certainly wouldn't get away with noise like that inside the library. Anyway, Rama is here with the sport.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sports, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Good evening. Callum McGregor is set to be sidelined for at least a month after sustaining a facial injury. The Celtic captain underwent a scan following this challenge from Alloa's Adam King during the club's Scottish Cup tie at the weekend. McGregor will miss crucial matches both domestically and in Europe. Meanwhile, ahead of Celtic's trip to Tynecastle on Wednesday, Hearts boss Robbie Neilson expects John Souttar to be back in his squad. Souttar, who has signed a pre-contract with Rangers, didn't feature at the weekend due to an ankle injury. The Ibrox club want to bring the defender to the club during this month, but their bid of £300,000 was rejected.
John trained today, so getting a wee bit of treatment at his ankle and I expect him to be available for Wednesday.
Has there been any further developments with Rangers on that?
Nothing, no.
No. Are you expecting anything in the next few days? Or?
She'll wait and see, you know what I mean? We've had an offer to get knocked back and that's it, done.
Is it a distraction at all for you when you've got these big games coming up to have that in the back of your head?
Not really, to be honest with you, we're just focusing on the game, all eyes are on Celtic now.
Jamie McGrath is set to return to the St Mirren squad for tomorrow's game against Aberdeen following clear-the-air talks with manager Jim Goodwin. The midfielder has been left out of the squad for the club's last 2 games, with Goodwin saying McGrath's head has not been in the right place due to speculation over his future.
Jamie's priority right now needs to be, playing games for St Mirren Football Club, keeping himself in the mind of Stephen Kenny, the Irish manager, and he's no good to anybody when he's missing games like he has done the last couple for us because the distractions around him. So I think we've managed to get beyond that now. We've cleared the air, and Jamie trained really well this morning, and I think his focus is now back on playing for St Mirren.
Now, with the Winter Olympics getting underway next week, cross-country skier Andrew Musgrave says he's ready to create history at the Games in Beijing. The 31-year-old is one of 5 Scots in the 21-strong Team GB ski and snowboard squad. Here's Ronnie Charters.
Andrew Musgrave is no stranger to the pressures of cross-country skiing. After making his debut in Vancouver in 2010, the Scot finished 7th in the skiathlon at the last Olympics, the best result ever for a British skier. Now, having been selected for his 4th Games in a row, he's eyeing Britain's first cross-country skiing medal.
Always confident I was going to be selected, but it is very nice to get the confirmation because you've worked towards this for 4 years and you think you're going to make it, but it's always just nice to get that final confirmation. So now that's the first part done. Now I've just got to nail the final preparations and perform well when we get there.
Musgrave will take part in 3 disciplines, including the gruelling 50-kilometre marathon. That discipline has meant the 31-year-old's pushed himself to the limit in his training.
It's always kind of on the back of your mind, am I pushing too much? Because you can do too much. More doesn't necessarily mean better. And then it's normal, you wake up and you're absolutely wrecked from the day's training beforehand, but you're like, oh, have I pushed it a little bit too far? Have I not? And so I'm kind of always thinking about that a wee bit. It's always at the back of my mind.
The Winter Games start next Friday, where Musgrave will hope to carve his name into the history books. Ronnie Charters, STV News.
To rugby, and despite Glasgow Warriors crashing out of the European Champions Cup at the weekend, Attacks coach Nigel Calleran believes they're more than capable of competing at the top level. Glasgow were beaten by last year's finalist La Rochelle in the final group game, meaning they dropped down to the Challenge Cup.
Where we want to be, we need to measure ourselves against these best teams, but I think we're definitely making progress, and if we can, address those areas and show that we've learned from those things, I think we'll be better for it.
And that is all the sport for me tonight, folks. More sports news on our website, stv.tv/sport.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sports, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Let's take a look at the weather now with Philip.
A light drizzle is coming in from the west. TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
Well, as we head through the rest of this evening and overnight, we're seeing these frontal systems that have been stalled across the north of the country, finally moving northeastwards, and it's dragging a lot of that light rain and drizzle that we've had across western parts through the day away with it. So it will be turning drier, but we hold on to a lot of the cloud. So where we've got the thickest cloud, temperatures dropping to lows around 6 or 7 degrees Celsius. Under any clearer spots, though, getting down to 2 or 3. Now looking ahead to tomorrow, we are in a warmer sector of air, which means it will be a cloudy day across much of the country. Later on there is a cold front moving in from the west, and that could bring with it some further light rain and drizzle, temperature wise reaching highs of 7 or 8 degrees Celsius. Now looking ahead to Wednesday, unfortunately it will turn very unsettled. We've got a deep area of low pressure across Iceland, and that in turn is giving us tightly packed isobars across the country. So we will see some quite strong winds with the risk of gales across exposed western coastal parts. It's also pushing in frontal systems from the Atlantic, and that will bring with it further rain and drizzle through the course of the day, particularly heavy across western areas. Further east, a drier day to come. Still a lot of cloud around though, with temperatures reaching highs of 10 or 11. Thursday it'll start off very windy, but the winds will ease through the course of the afternoon, and it will be feeling a lot colder. Temperatures reaching highs of 7 or 8 Celsius. Bye-bye.
TUI Blue Hotels. Sponsor STV Weather.
And finally, from playing to shoppers in Buchanan Street to selling out the Barrowland Ballroom. Over the last year, a busker from Glasgow has had a meteoric rise to the top of Scotland's music scene.
Dylan John Thomas, who counts Jerry Cinnamon and Liam Gallagher as fans, is being heralded as the next big thing in Scottish music. He says it will be a dream come true when he takes to the Barras stage in just a few months' time. Polly Bartlett has the story.
Swapping the streets of Glasgow for the stage of the legendary Barrowland Ballroom.
It's daunting, but I suppose busking on Buchanan Street, like, you can then go play anywhere. It's like, if you're just getting people just shouting nonsense at you every day, do you know what I mean? I think it's harder to play in front of 10 people than what it is to play in front of like a couple of thousand. We grew up just along the road for the Barras, so we've got so many vivid memories. Yeah, it's always been there since we were wee boys. Gone to the markets, getting PlayStation games, gone to the guitar shops as well along the road.
Dylan grew up in foster care in a house close to the Barras. He hasn't ever had a music lesson and says that upbringing shaped him into the musician he is today.
We were in the foster house and we would play the PlayStation, we'd play Tony Hawk's. So we'd listen to the soundtrack and Johnny Cash, Ring of Fire would come on, and we'd all just be jumping about the house singing that. And that was the first song that I learned when I got a guitar. Well, I see it as an escapism. It was growing up in the situation that we grew up in. I didn't really feel that there was a way out, but that's what guitar gave me.
Over the last year, Dylan has firmly cemented himself on the Scottish music scene and has found a mentor in Jerry Cinnamon. After his gig at the Barras, he won't be going back to busking. Instead, he's been booked to play the Transmit main stage this summer.
When I think about that, for busking out in the pouring rain to then playing Transmit main stage, it's like, how do you even comprehend that?
When the neon lights are switched on and Dylan takes to the stage in April, it's safe to say he'll be in for a night to remember. Polly Bartlett, STV News.
Well done. With a name like Dylan, you can't really go wrong, can you?
Absolutely. A brilliant name.
I'll be back with Scotland Tonight at 10:40 from all of us. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Bye-bye.